Hi students, before I get started today, um, continue with the 5 themes of geography. I think it's kind of neat to see a little bit of video of Pablo. Pablo's my pet pug, you've probably heard about him. And this little fella is, I got him from the rescue, I think, got him last year. This is some video from last year. All he does is sleep most of the day. And you can see here he's sleeping too. Right now, while I'm videoing my screen, he's actually snoring in front of me. But this is a common pose of Pablo when he sits with me. And we're very attached. So that's Pablo chillaxing. And I'll say goodbye to Pablo. Okay. All right, kids, let's continue anyway with the 5 themes of geography. And the reason I told you we'd learn about the 5 themes of geography is because these themes help us to explain the world that we live in. They kind of simplify things in a way. So we've already gone over what the 5 themes are: location, place, human environment interaction, movement, and region. And the other day, I told you about absolute location. We practiced absolute location and relative location. That could be like describing, relative Dempsey's west of Pennsylvania on Pennsylvania Avenue from Sandusky. My house is 2 blocks south from the Dairy Queen on Route 23. Australia is north of New Zealand. That's relative location. Absolute is where we use coordinates, and coordinates, things like this, is an example of coordinates. 38 degrees north and 95 degrees west. Those are coordinates, the degrees and the direction, in this case, north of the equator, and the west is west of the prime meridian. If it was east, it would be east of the prime meridian. And over here, if it was south, it would be south of the equator. So these are in relation to the equator and the prime meridian. But these are exact points on our planet Earth. Okay, relative is relative. It's near something. It's close by to something. Okay, so we also looked at place, and I asked you to think about Delaware. I said, what is it like there? What is it like in Delaware? Think of the physical things, the natural features. So if you drove around Delaware, would you see mountains? Would you see deserts? No, you wouldn't, would you? Okay, you're more likely to see flat land. Okay, and that land has been actually affected though by humans. So, for example, agricultural practices or farming practices, we see that corn is grown in these flat areas, and probably trees were removed to grow corn in that space. But human features of Delaware could be, for example, the brown jug. Human features could be people at the market, market day in Delaware. Human features could be that Delaware has some old architecture downtown. Human features could be language, what language is spoken in Delaware, or the religion of many of the people in Delaware, or what religions are in this place. What's it like there? So you think about those things in Delaware itself, and this applies to anywhere in the world. What's it like there? Place, the theme of place. I showed you this boat. This isn't the kind of boat that you're going to see on the Olentangy River, but in the South Pacific, it's a distinctive type of boat for that area. Okay, it's a human characteristic, a feature of that place. Physical feature of this area is it's mainly desert, a dry area with mountains. I told you also in Scotland, a common instrument that's played there is the bagpipes. Okay, Scotland is associated with the bagpipes, and there are other places in the world too where they play the bagpipes. Wearing the kilt is a traditional costume in Scotland. This is a human characteristic. Humans created these characteristics for Scotland. They didn't create volcanoes, though. Those are created by nature. So it's a physical feature of place, of that place. Now, we did move on to human environment interaction. So I want you to think about how you change and adapt to the environment of Delaware. So think about how the weather changes. That's part of the environment, is the weather, the climate. And so in the winter, you're going to be wearing heavier coats. In the summer, you're going to wear possibly shorts or t-shirts. Some areas of the world, people even elevate the housing on stilts where flooding occurs. We don't have to do that in Delaware, at least not yet. But in the past, there were floods, but people didn't expect them to happen so often that they were going to build their homes on stilts. So these are some examples of how humans adapt to their environment, how they interact, how they are adapting to their environment, or how they change their environment, or how they are changed by the environment. So humans might change the environment by digging canals. You might dig canals to drain water from wetlands. You might dig canals to transport goods along those canals. Also, they might build dams. Building dams is common, especially in dry areas, to preserve the amount of water in the area. Okay, so humans might also adapt in cold climates, like in the Arctic environment. When they built the Alaska pipeline, this land is deep in what we call permafrost, several feet down, and so they have to adapt construction methods. Sometimes it's easier to build a tunnel through mountains in an environment that's mountainous rather than trying to drive over those mountains. People might have tunnels constructed if this is what people need. They need to travel faster and easier. They might decide, well, it's worth the effort to change the environment so much by digging tunnels through the mountains. Like, for example, in Europe, there's the Mont Blanc tunnel. Mont Blanc means white mountain. Mont is French for mountain. Blanc is French for white mountain. And there you can go through the tunnel from one country to another. So I think it's from Switzerland. You'd enter one side through Switzerland, from Switzerland, and then arrive in Italy when you come through the tunnel. Also, there's even parts of the world where humans have reclaimed land from the sea. And notice it says, at least for now. With climate change, maybe that land that's been reclaimed from the sea, that land is going to be reclaimed by the sea in the future, possibly, if our sea rises. The sea levels rise so much due to climate change and the polar ice caps melting. So, but in the Netherlands, they've put a lot of effort into reclaiming land from the sea and draining wetlands and also protecting their coastline from flooding. So much so that the people of the Netherlands, engineers from the Netherlands, are looked as experts for building these kind of engineering projects in other parts of the world. Let's actually take a look. Let's take a break from this PowerPoint and take a look at the area of the world. So this is an area of the Netherlands called Flevopolder, and a polder is an area that's reclaimed from the sea. And you can see it's very flat. Notice the windmills. The Netherlands is really well known for its windmills, but these are modern windmills, and these can produce energy. But the original windmills, the old style windmills, were actually for pumping the water from the wetlands. And you can see, look how flat it is. It's very flat. And originally this would have been under the water of the North Sea. And if you head west from this area, across that sea over here, you'd actually come to the British Isles, to Great Britain. Much of this land today is also used for growing crops and also flowers, flowers and vegetables. Um, let's let's see if we've got any more. I think that's the only photograph there, but that is in the Netherlands. Let's get out of there. Pablo's snoring in the background, by the way. So we've looked at human-environment interaction and place, and we looked at location earlier. Let's now move on to movement. Movement is what it is. It's what it says, movement, things moving. Things could be any of the items that you've bought have been made somewhere else and they've moved from that place. But there's also people moving around this world. So we know that people move around this world for all kinds of reasons. People are moving to look for work, they're migrating. Some people are moving in search for water, they're that desperate for water. They move from one place to another. We call people that move from one place to another nomadic people, nomadic. But also today, lots of things are moving really quickly around the world. These would be non-material things, and I'm talking about things like ideas, information, in fashions, news, and with electronic media, with the internet, things are moving at lightning speed. Hundreds of years ago, a fashion in one country may have taken several years to get to another country 100 miles away. Today it moves within seconds. Ideas, same idea. Ideas likewise will move very rapidly around the world, whereas hundreds of years ago it would take much longer for an idea such as laws of gravity, ideas about the arts, how to be, certain art techniques that were developed in one country that were excellent, like say during the Renaissance in Italy, which we'll be learning about at some point. Those ideas would have taken a long time to move from one area of the world to another. And so, like I said, we've got material objects, things, material objects such as things, passengers, cargo that go on planes or ships or whatever mode of transport, method of transport. Those are material things, material objects being moved around the world, often trade items, so things being bought in one part of the world and being moved to another, but also people. And people are moving for all kinds of reasons around the world. And some people, sadly, some people are having to move because of climate change, because their crops are failing. They're having to move to other parts of the world. And we're seeing in our world today, many people are in desperate situations trying to get to wealthier nations where they have a chance to actually survive or even thrive, do well with a well-paid job or at least a job that pays them to survive, to live. So those are material things, people moving, objects moving. But the non-material things are, like I said before, electronic data, news, pictures, things moving on the internet, ideas. And these things we could say moving visibly from one place to many others. So think of you using your cell phone, you're getting all kinds of information from friends or from the news or new trends. You're picking those up. Those ideas are passing around the world invisibly. So that's two examples of movement, material things that are moving and the non-material. So we could say things that you can actually touch and things that you can't touch. So you can't touch an idea, you can't touch the news, you can't touch a picture that's just being sent. I mean, I'm not talking about your screen, but the actual picture is data. It's being sent, and ideas you you can't touch those things. Material things are things that you can actually touch. Okay, and then the next theme we're looking at is regions. So think about what Ohio might be known for. And if you take a walk just outside Delaware, think about something that you might see growing. So you're not going to see oranges, but what might you see growing in the farmers' fields? You thought about that? Some of you are going to say corn, some might say soy. So Ohio is known as a corn and soy growing region. It's also in a region called the Midwest. We call this area the Midwest, and Ohio is part of it, along with several other states. So regions are areas united or together, brought together by having something in common. So the Midwest, we could say, is a larger area than Ohio, but it includes states like Ohio and others that are similar in features such as their geography. So think of the landscape, the culture, the way of life could be more similar here in Ohio and say Nebraska and surrounding states. The lifestyle could be a lot, those states will probably have something in common in terms of lifestyle compared to the way people living in these fishing cities, fishing towns, should I say, in the northeast live. It'd be a very different kind of culture. So there's a lot of things in common with the way people live in this area. And in the southeast, people might have something more in common with each other than they would in the northeast. The culture could be quite distinct here compared to the Midwest. And the history too. For example, the Midwest was settled later than many of these areas on the East Coast. So it's distinct from these areas on the East Coast in terms of settlement. When it was settled, its history. And also the climate. The climate here in the Midwest is definitely different than the climate down here in the West. Okay, we have cold winters, hot, humid summers. Southern California is definitely going to be different than the climate here in the Midwest. So regions are areas that have something in common. For example, this is a map that shows corn being grown in the United States. And these areas that are green, you'll see some very light green areas coming into some very dark green areas. If there are green areas anywhere on this map, that green shows that these are corn growing areas. They have something in common with each other. And so this is great because you can show them on a map. You can see, using the 5 themes, you can say this is a region that grows corn, but so is this. But this one grows more than this light green colour over here. So the different shades of green represent different amounts of corn being produced in different areas of the United States, but they are all corn producing regions of the United States. If this was a map showing orange growing regions, do you think we'd have orange growing shown here in Ohio? No, we wouldn't. Think about why. Here's another map showing apple growing regions of the world. Now it's quite a small map. Let's put this on present view. There are green areas here in Washington State. I was hoping to see that. Yeah, you can see there's some green there. But apples are very much a common crop in these parts of Europe and also in the Far East. And you can't see it here, but New Zealand's also known for growing apples too. You can't really see it on this map. But these are areas where apples are grown. So the darker the green, the higher amount of apples produced. But this map shows the major apple growing regions of the world. And I'm not talking about people just growing an apple tree in their backyard. We're talking about where farmers commit their lives to growing apples on a large scale. And obviously, looking at this map, you can see this is very dark green. This is where there are much more apples grown than, say, these light green areas. I have a question for you. Look at this map. You've got all the continents shown on this map. You've got North America there, South America. So we've got North America, South America, Africa, Europe, Asia, Australia. Sometimes we call this region Oceania, with New Zealand over here and Australia put together with some of these islands of the Pacific. Some geographers just call it Australasia, this area. But what I want you to do is, I want you to look at Antarctica. Look for Antarctica. Do you notice apples being grown in Antarctica? You don't, do you? No apples being grown here. Why do you think that's the case? Why wouldn't it be an apple growing region? It's pretty simple, isn't it? It's not got the right climate. Okay, you don't see apples being grown here in this part of Africa. Why not? Again, it's not got the right climate in this area. This is actually desert. This is a Sahara desert in North Africa. So that is why. So especially fruit and vegetable regions are determined by climate. So these places, when we look at regions, we're looking at places that have something in common and we can show them on a map real easily. Okay, I'm going to bring this to a close now. And what I'd like us to do is we're going to play, well, I'm going to put in the announcement that at the end of this presentation, I'd like you all to go to Gimkit Live, and I'll set that up for you for the end of this presentation. So if you arrived on time, you'll be able to play the game of Gimkit, or Gimkit as it's pronounced, practicing with 5 themes of geography. And I'll let you practice yesterday for homework. So today we'll have a game of live Gimkit. I'm hoping you all can get yourself in, and I'm hoping you've all already set up an account there. Okay, students, it's goodbye from me, and it's also goodbye from Pablo, and it's been great spending time with you. By the way, the Gimkit is to practice, to help you with a test, and we'll be having a test, let's see what day, probably early next week, so we're looking at maybe Tuesday next week. All right, kids, bye for now, and don't forget we'll be having the Gimkit Live game. So we'll go to that straight after you've watched this video. Thank you.